Okay. We'll call the meeting to order for the City of Saratoga Springs, Tuesday, February 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Present tonight, we have Councilman Karn, Porter, Wilden, McComber, and Podescus. We do have a quorum. I've asked Councilman Porter to lead us in our invocation and Councilman Podesca to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be able to gather together this evening and to conduct the business of the City of Saratoga Springs. And we ask Thee to please bless us with guidance and discernment that as we discuss the issues tonight, that we'll be able to make decisions in the best interests of our citizens. And we ask Thee to please bless our first responders, that they will be watched over and protected as they serve the citizens of our city. They'll be kept safe, and also ask a blessing on members of the military as they serve at home and overseas, protecting our freedoms. And we say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Will everyone please rise and repeat the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we have a presentation tonight from the police department. Do you need a minute?
The officer for the ceremony just called and said he's stuck in some traffic.
Okay, we will hold off and come back to it.
We're ready as soon as I come back.
Okay, perfect. With that change, we'll move the public input up into this portion of the policy session. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, comments for subject matter not listed on the agenda. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Owen Jackson will keep our timer tonight. Is anybody here for public input? If so, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. This is not a time to have a debate or respond, but to share your concerns. Anybody for public input?
Mayor, Councilman, thank you for your time. My name is Chad Waite. I am a resident of Mount Saratoga. Been here since July, love the city. Moved here from Harriman, and in doing so, we were working with Edge Homes to build and plan a house in the development up there on the ridge. During that process, the salespeople at Edge, as well as pretty much every other contact representative that we had at that company, had given us the assurances that there would be no further development behind us for the course of about 3 or 4 years, and that directly behind where the homes were built, they would not have flexible housing or high-density housing units. It turns out after reviewing some plans that they had that these were, some misleading statements, and while pretty much myself and everybody else, I know there's a few people here from Sage Hill Drive, we recognize the need for high-density housing with the population growth we have. But we feel that these statements that were given to us by Edge Homes and, every representative were made in a misleading manner that was material to our decisions to purchase where we are at. To be very clear, the back of our houses are now about to have a wall of townhomes that are looking straight down our back windows. And again, we're not asking for them to redo the entire high-density development. We know that that's not really a feasible option, but to reconsider the space directly behind where our homes are at. Now, Mayor, I know that we have reached out to your assistant. She's been very helpful in helping us get some additional contacts over Edge, but our conversations with Edge Homes have been less than fruitful. If it would help to maybe give you some of our logic and reasonings and the proposals that we've given to not only members of the City Council, but also Edge Homes. I've printed copies of our solution out. If I can come up and...
Just give them to Owen.
Oh, perfect.
He'll pass them. Or even Jeremy right there.
Thank you so much. With that, I will end my statement, but I'm sure that there are a handful of others who would like to say something as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi there. Nate Sanders, resident of Sage Hill Drive. Our address over there is 1326 on that street. Just want to echo what Chad said. I think, over the last couple of weeks, we've had correspondence with Edge Homes, and there's been some additional concerns that I think our household has around what was communicated about not only what the plans are for the property behind us, how it would be done, things like that, that were less than direct, less than transparent, and I think also lack like some of the transparency that other developments have had. And so to echo what Chad said there, we were very direct in our questions around asking what would the intended plans were. In fact, we actually looked at another area in Quail Hill that had a high density unit behind it and just made a decision not to be able to go there just because of the lot plan and things like that. And again, to echo his point around high density units, for me, it's not an NIMBY thing. Totally want the ability to be able to have more affordable housing as we grow as a city, but also want to be able to know that as we build homes that there's, people's word being taken in, I guess, that we can trust people's word is rather probably the best way to say that. So would love to be able to consider the options that Chad put forward here. I think there's ways and, methods that we can be creative around how to be able to respect the agreements that were made to the residents that live on Sage Hill Drive that are listed there. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Johnson. My husband Grady and I live on 1318 West Sage Hill Drive. We too, like Chad and Nate, were under the impression that, or we were told that we would have single-family homes backing our property line when we purchased our lot, and are concerned about the misrepresentation from Edge, and also the lack of communication with them now, trying to come to some kind of resolution or resolve some of these issues that we've brought up with them. Also would like to just, I'm sorry, I'm not as eloquent as these guys. A little nervous. Just voice our concern with how Ed just kind of treated my neighbors that live down the street, and myself included, kind of some character attacks about our issues with townhomes. So just for you guys to keep that in mind in the future. And thanks for letting us join the meeting.
Anybody else for public input?
Hello, my name is Laurette Beck. Many of you may know my husband, Jeff, who's the more outspoken part of our marriage, but it's a testament to how strongly I feel about this issue that I am here to talk tonight. I think that it behooves the City Council of Saratoga Springs to take a stand to protect the interests of our city. There are conversations taking place right now at the state capitol and around the valley that I think would have dramatic impacts upon the lake, which is one of the defining characteristics of our community. Personally, I feel like it's one of the best kept secrets in Utah that on the west side of the lake, we have the prettiest views in the state. And it's no wonder that people are flocking here and houses are being built like crazy. And we know that there's a lot of housing demand. So one big hot issue that's being discussed at the state legislature is the creation of the Utah Lake Authority. And there's also legislation seeking to provide clarity regarding the so-called Utah Lake Restoration Project. And I know that I emailed all of you actually about this last month. This is a proposal by a private group to dredge the lake bed and create islands. Those islands would then be sold off and developed into residential areas. Plans recently revealed by this group show that the first phase of the project would take place on the north end of Utah Lake, creating an archipelago of islands surrounding the city of Vineyard. Last week, I watched a city council meeting in Vineyard where one of the city council women expressed great concern and frustration that this was the first time she had seen this plan. And as I've interacted with some members of the city council, I'm aware that I don't think Lake Restoration Solutions has interacted with our city at all, as far as I know. I'm greatly concerned that we have state legislators and a private corporation making decisions that will affect our community. Vineyard's not that far away, and the islands would come halfway across the lake. And their plans also call for islands to be directly off the shore of Saratoga Springs. So when I emailed you last month, I urged you to consider drafting a resolution or to, in some level, start to engage on these issues. Since then, there are now 3 cities, American Fork, Provo, and Orem, have all drafted resolutions regarding the Utah Lake Authority, restoration efforts, which we all know are needed. And I'm not here to argue that point. You guys know better than I do. But I think that any plan that calls for development or building a city that could house 500,000 people is really not in the best interest of the people that currently live in Utah Valley. And so I'm just here to encourage you to take a stand, and I thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, my name is Rich Foggio. Good evening. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about our shared love of Utah Lake and what we can do about it as guardians of the lake. So why tonight and why the urgency? Loretta was ahead of us last month. I think you all know 2 things have happened recently. The Army Corps released the permit for dredging application, and LRS, and the legislature is hearing a couple of bills that impact our city and the lake that surrounds us. So the time is right. As Loretta said, our neighbors have jumped on this. They've been researching the issues, and American Fork, Provo, and actually Saratoga Springs HOA have all issued resolutions to the legislature. So I apologize for not providing the briefing materials sooner than I emailed them to Owen and Cindy, but hopefully they provide some good background for you. I don't pretend that you had the time to read everything, especially because there was a football game going on. But if I can, I'd just like to hit a couple of the high points about what I've heard and read. First of all, we're riding a wave of success, right? The Utah Lake Commission, 20-plus projects, they're working. They may not be fast, but they're working. We've all heard about the June sucker coming off the endangered list, the Wakara Way, the Provo River Delta, Phragmites spraying, and the like. According to the last Utah Lake Commission meeting, they said we've made real progress and the lake is on a road to recovery. In fact, at that meeting, the CEO of Eutrophics, the algae abatement company that works on the lake, their CEO said, and I quote, the Utah Lake is on a path toward long-term restoration. So we ought to feel good about that. Maybe not as good about the speed, but at least progress. However, in the dredging permit application, LRS incorrectly portrays these restoration projects as inadequate pilot programs, section 2.2 for those keeping score. They also go so far as to state that despite significant efforts, Utah Lake continues to degrade, and that without their dredging project, quote, the future of Utah Lake, its plants, animal species, and use of the lake by residents of the state of Utah remains uncertain. Really? Also, section 2.2. So secondly, many of us have been told the lake's been polluted. I'm told the data actually says otherwise. Research shows there's no dangerous levels of heavy metals or PCPs in the lake, and in fact, sediment core samples show concentrations of lead, copper, zinc are all well below EPA limits. Third, many of us Utahns believe the algal blooms are getting worse. However, I'm told the data says otherwise. Satellite imagery confirms that over the years, the amount and duration of algal blooms have decreased. Lake-wide algal blooms, we know, are no longer occurring. In fact, the algal blooms have been reduced to really two hotspots, Provo Bay and Linden on the east shore. And notably, the dredging application doesn't touch Provo Bay, one of the two areas of continuing algal blooms. Fourth, over 100 scientists signed a letter saying they have serious scientific questions.
Sir, do you have this where you could give it to us? We're well over our 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought somebody, I do. It's in the package I sent out a couple of days ago. And that package has been made available to the mayor and council.
Okay.
Okay, I was just trying to hit some highlights for those that didn't have the time to do it. Can I have one more minute on HB 232 and Utah Lake Authority?
1 minute, yeah.
1 minute. Okay. Five thoughts on 232. First, huge scope and power, right? Their powers include exclusive land use and authority to buy, sell, grant, or gift any land on or around Utah Lake. Second thought, really questionable priorities that are mandated by law, including the priority to enhance and improve economic development and build infrastructure and then derive revenue from that infrastructure. Amazingly, lines 123 say the ULA can use tax dollars, loans, and fees collected to build sewers, roads, solid waste facilities, public transit, and more. Really? On and around the lake? And then my favorite is the priority to meet housing needs. Really? We need housing in the lake?
Sir, that
Anyway,
yep.
I encourage you all to read the draft resolution we provided, vote on it favorably, and timing is important because the legislature is voting on it tomorrow in committee. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything you do, and I'm sorry I ran over. No, you're fine.
Hi, I'm Peggy Kleimanson. I live at 1662 South Wiltshire. Lorette and Richard spoke on HB 232. I would just like to make the comment, in addition to the committee hearing that's tomorrow afternoon at 4, that it's premature. It was triggered by the LRS Islands proposal, and they face a very long NEPA project review by the Army Corps of Engineers. That application published on February 3rd. Yesterday, and in the documents that I have for handouts for you folks, is a document that is a publication put out by 26 experts. Those 26 experts go through, on the first page, what's an overview of the Army Corps application. Their review shows a profound lack of understanding of the Utah Lake system, a nearly absent restoration plan. The few restoration measures vaguely described bear no resemblance to proven practices in lake restoration and conservation. Wholly inadequate precautions to prevent permanent damage to Utah Valley and the lake. Required sections absent, unfinished, and plagiarized from government and other companies' applications. Fails to demonstrate need for the project or alternatives both required by the Army Corps. An admission that LRS has not developed a restoration plan for the lake. No confidence that LRS will achieve the restoration criteria required by the Utah Lake Restoration Act or protect Utahns from the enormous infrastructure, environmental, and economic risks imposed by their attempt. It's in that document. Please read it. It's printed out to make it easy for you. They're back up past that first page summary that I just highlighted. LRS has been telling us to trust them. They've been telling us for several years to trust them. They told us to trust them at the summit that Representative Stratton handled and sponsored. And Chris, I'm not sure whether you were there or not. I believe Chris was at the Utah Commission meeting the next morning, where again, they told us to trust them, that they had all this data in their application, 500 pages plus, and we just needed to be patient, and they couldn't divulge it ahead of time because it was against Army policy. Well, that's false. Okay, but we get the application, and there's no data. It's not there. So please read, please become informed. I don't know whether you know Jacob Halliday, whose family has lived on Utah Lake. They were the first farmers on the border of Utah Lake. He produced a quick video on social, well, not a quick video, a long video on social media this week about how LRS has sabotaged the Wakara Way project. Listen to what he has to say, because he was engaged in a 4-year process, engaging with the local communities, and we know now what's going on over there. LRS hasn't engaged with the local communities. We need more of that. We need more trust. We need transparency and engagement, and I really would love to be able to take a Saratoga Springs City resolution to the committee hearing tomorrow. I know that's a near impossibility, but if you folks sign one tonight, let me know and I will hand carry it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Hi, my name is Alberto Santoyo, and my address is 1342 West Sage Hill. I'd like to draw your attention back to the topic that both Chad, Nate, and a few of my other neighbors brought up. We're put in a position where we have been essentially misguided, and it's been a very poor display from Edge to try to communicate with us when we've brought up these concerns. For them, I feel like it's just numbers, but for us, this is our homes. So I encourage you, please, to look at the proposal that Chad brought to you, as it brings up a resolution which could potentially be win-win rather than any party losing. And I truly hope that you take the time at looking at this and talking to Edge, because our concerns have been brought up and they have not been heard. And they have not communicated us, or with us, excuse me, those concerns. So I encourage you, please, or I plead with you that you look into this and see if we can come up with a solution where both parties win. Thank you for your time.
Okay, anybody else for public input? Seeing none, I will close the public input portion of our meeting. We'll go back to item 5, the presentation of the police promotion.
Mayor, council, we apologize for the delay. While we were waiting, we took a vote of the officers that were present and decided to go ahead with the promotion anyway. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and before we go into the promotion, just let me state again for both you and the public record that the police department staff is aware of and appreciates the support from the mayor and council. So thank you very much. We're here tonight to conduct the promotion of Detective Thomas Potts to the rank of corporal. And I know you know, and the manager and staff know, that we have a very demanding and arduous testing process for promotions within the police department, but I wanted the citizens present to know that we have a very tough test in order to get promoted. Detective Potts is an 8-year veteran of the police department. He's served the last 2 years as a detective, and he serves on the major accident team and the SWAT team. So he's got a lot of experience and capability that he's going to bring to bear in this job. With him tonight is his wife, Kimberly. She'll be pinning the badge, his new badge, here in just a minute. But we'll go ahead with posting of this order. Saratoga Springs Police Department, Certificate of Promotion to Corporal. The Chief of Police of the Saratoga Springs Police Department has reposed special trust and confidence in the loyalty, valor, fidelity, and abilities of Thomas Potts. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated potential for increased responsibility, he's promoted to the rank of corporal effective February 20th, 2022. Given under my hand the 20th day of February 2022 in the city of Saratoga Springs, Utah. Signed, Andrew Burton, Chief of Police. Now, I realize it's not the 20th, but for our Human Resources Department, we match the dates to the date that it'll actually happen. So I'll present this certificate to Corporal Potts with congratulations. And now hopefully, and Kimberly, go ahead and start changing out that badge. Hopefully, we'll get this badge pinned on without any requirement for a first report of injury. We get the old badge back.
Conservative.
Officers, if they want their old badge, can purchase it, but, yeah. All right, thank you very much, Mayor, Council.
Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do reports really quick, then we'll jump back to the work session. Anything from the city council? Councilman Karn?
Thanks, Mayor. I know that during public comment, we don't typically go back and forth. I do want to address one thing that, just so it's not that we're ignoring anything. And the city attorney, assistant attorney can maybe correct me if I'm incorrect in speaking here, but we can't, I know a resolution was presented to us. We can't do anything with that unless it's on the agenda.
We didn't public.
It's not publicly noticed, it's not on our agenda. We cannot take a position on that.
There's a 24-hour minimum requirement.
Right. I just want that to be aware. Legally, we can't do anything with that. So I have one other issue I wanted to ask our city manager to address. I've had some residents reach out to me on the layout of Foothill Boulevard, Mountain View corridor, south of Pony Express to Lariat. I was hoping you could just give, without going too in-depth, a brief history on the layout of that design and that road and kind of how long that's been planned to be there.
So specifically, there's always been a plan for a Foothill Boulevard back in that area. In fact, when the benches was originally approved and entitled, and I want to say that was in the mid-2000s, somewhere around 2005-ish. And I apologize, I did not have a chance to research and get my dates right, but it's about around mid-2005 when the benches project was vested, and when all of those property lot lines and things were devised. The original Foothill Boulevard was immediately on the back of the fences off of Rocky Ridge. And so if you go look at the parcel maps today, you'll still see vestiges where the city owned that as a public right-of-way and a public road. Now, when the gas station came in, probably in around 2010, 2011, 12, somewhere in there, there's a high-pressure gas line that is down on the northwestern edge of benches. That was actually placed on what would have been the outside of that right-of-way. And so even at that point, that roadway was designed to go into that location, and there's a gas line that largely follows that alignment across that property. Because of the requests of the residents and the concerns that were raised, when we worked with UDOT to try and push Foothill Boulevard further to the west, as we looked at some preliminary concept alignments back, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, we were looking at how we could do that. And the problem is where the PEX pits are, where the clay pits are, and where they've been using that for landfill, all of that material has become unstable. And the problem with going further west than that, you start dealing with some more serious elevation issues. And more importantly, you've now positioned the road so far to the west that it has less benefit. It will collect less vehicles. And so if I were a traffic planner, which I'm not, thank heavens, you would put that road so it's kind of right in the center, right behind the homes, but it allows the homes that will potentially in the future get built above there to feed down into that and then use that as kind of that prime roadway. So we've looked at that. There is a UDOT did do, with Avenue engineers, they did do a concept plan, Jeremy, I want to say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that, where they actually looked at the alignment. They helped us come up with an alignment. Prior to that, the residents were concerned about Foothill. We began researching it. We began putting some early numbers on it, and we finally got UDOT to kind of weigh in and say, wait, where's the best place for this alignment? And so that alignment, because in some sections of the city, we already had worked with developers on right-of-way and other things, especially down once you get to Fox Hollow. Again, right behind Rocky Ridge, we were able to push that out, and it does come close to those existing neighborhoods, but again, we have to avoid the mining operations that have been there. So again, that alignment that we're now showing for the Foothill alignment, one, it is about a 450-foot alignment. It will have frontage roads from Pony Express all the way down to Grandview Boulevard. We're at 95, 98% design right now. It's ready to go. We did our final review of that, and it should be going out to bid here shortly. At this point, if there was remotely a discussion on changing right-of-way, we're back a year at least from constructing, because we've got to go and finish right-of-way and redo right-of-way and redo design, because it is fully designed at this point for the location that it's looking to get built.
Okay, so I appreciate that history and feedback. I will encourage residents who've talked to me to come back and watch this on our YouTube channel so they can get that update. And I know you can't read the future, and this 3.5 mile section of road is approximately $18 million to build.
It's 16.
16 million, sorry. I estimated on the high side. Approximately $16 million to build. This, just so people are aware, this is a section of road that goes from Pony Express to just behind where Maverick is today on Lariat Boulevard. It is a 3-lane road, 1 lane in each direction with a turn lane, right?
Yeah, and turn lanes will be strategic
Right,
near those
right.
intersections and things.
So with that said, without being a future teller, we are several years down the road before the other side of that frontage comes in. And
for
then
sure.
more several years before it gets, the middle comes in.
Thank you. And so if you think of how
More several years.
If you think of how
Yeah.
2100 up in Lehigh was built, they started off with the 2 frontage road
Right.
on the east or on the north and the south. We're building the eastern edge down to Lariat. As development continues, we'll continue to pull that down to the south end of the city. At some point, when capacity is out there, we'll start widening that, and we'll start making that larger. We have an environmental study that's going to be done by UDOT starting in about 2023 that is going to look at the state environmental impact study that'll come in. It'll review that. At some point, we know that this is going to be a state road. We've partnered with the state, so the first lane that we're building, or those first 2 lanes that we're building, we're trying to build to a UDOT standard so that it doesn't get ripped out again. We're putting it in a location so it's going to stay there and it's going to largely be there. We've tried to be as efficient as possible, so we're not building the same thing over and over again. We've heard our residents, and we're trying to be very proactive in that. So I would say it's going to be years, but once there's a need, we'll build on the western side, especially Grandview North, where we'll have the frontage road concept. And then as we continue further south, the widening there will look at a little different cross-section because it goes from like a 450 down to, what, a 350 or something cross-section as you get further south.
And just for the record, the city for years, maybe 10-plus years, have been planning for this and preserving the future right-of-way with developers and landowners so that we don't have to come in after the fact and potentially impact people's houses.
Correct. And when we redid the development agreement back in 2012, I believe, with Fox Hollow, when we resurrected their development agreement, that included about an 880-foot right-of-way dedication at that time. And so, yes, it's been on the books, for I think about as long as all of you have been on the council and as long as most of us have been employees here with the city.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you. Councilman McComber?
Great, thanks. And actually, Chris, I appreciate you bringing that up because there has been a lot of planning in that to build that road for a long time. And we built Red Road first, widened it first, and then we're working our way west, so that's fantastic. So Mayor, I just want to volunteer myself to maybe, if the council is interested in having a representative to maybe work with Edge for the Sage Hill development, I'd be happy to be a part of that. I just think that I was successful years ago in working with Amanda Lane and getting that finally solved. There was a big problem between the developer, the HOA, and the city, and it was just caused a lot of drama back in the day. And we finally got it fixed, and everyone was happy. But it took 10 years. I'm hoping we won't have to take 10 years. But I had just gotten on the council at the time, so. I would be happy to help with that and just making sure that the dialogue continues. I mean, the city has limited authority, but we can still influence. I mean, we can still have conversations because Edge Homes hopes to be a partner with the city for a long time, and so we would want them to hopefully be good stewards as well. So I'm happy to be a part of that, if that's possible. Also, just for the people here for the lake, I just wanted to let you know that we have representatives. We all sort of take different roles as council members, and you even alluded to the fact that Chris attends the Lake Commission meetings and things, and so they know where I support their thinking and their decisions, and we're trying to obviously carry a balancing act with the state, because if it gets passed and we're too harsh with them, then we lose any ability to have any vote or any say, and if we're so we're trying to play the right balance. But I can personally say, the Saratoga Springs, the lake, when everyone moved here, I've been here 14 years, I never even thought that this would even be something that would be considered. And hopefully they're looking at Dubai and the sinking islands. When you try and build an island where it's not meant to be built, look what happens. And so I also wanted to thank staff for some of the things that I've been asking in the past with some of the weed control and things like that. It was taken care of quickly and it looks much better. We asked residents to keep their weeds down on their park strips and in their yards and things, and there was just a couple of the city-owned islands and the roads in different areas that were looking a little bit disheveled, and I appreciate the efforts to make those look good so that we can be good partners with the residents here. And with that, I turn the time back over to you, Mayor. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Porter?
Just a couple things. I guess first, in regards to the lake, as was pointed out, we can't do anything about the resolution tonight due to noticing. I know generally we don't tend to do resolutions. I am interested in engaging on this topic. So if we could maybe look at a resolution in the future expressing our feelings about this project. I've expressed I believe I was chatting with Loretta. I've always been opposed to this. I think it's a foolish plan, but I think we need to have a conversation so we can represent our constituents on that topic.
I would agree. This is big enough where we normally don't do resolutions, but I do think this is big enough.
Right. The second thing is LPC. As was talked about, Councilman Wilden and I represent the council during the legislative session, working with other cities to try and take care of legislative issues. So just kind of as a report, we've talked about several of the issues, and those keep percolating. Utah Lake Authority bill is one of them that we've had a lot of discussions about. The big ones that are kind of coming up this week, besides the Utah Lake Authority bill, there's been a lot of conversation around secondary metering. Of course, we took the initiative and already moved on that. There's a lot of concern from other cities about how that's gonna how much that's gonna cost them.
Secondary meeting of the water system.
Right. Yeah. Second irrigation water. And so there's a lot of concern. We've been vocal in telling them that it's not as bad as they're trying to make it out to be. And that it does bring benefits. But there is some concern about what that's going to do to the supply chain. As far as us being able to get meters, we're already ordering 6 to 9 months out.
Yeah, we've got an order that will be here in July.
So when the entire state, orders, some 200,000.
You're looking to start a business.
Anybody knows how to make water meters, now's the time to get in. There's some concern, at least in our city, as far as that. So we need to make sure we're planning for that. And then there's been more discussion. There was recently a substitution on the retail incentives bill that changed that. This is the ability to incentivize businesses to come to our city. The legislature is really trying to curtail that and only allow incentivization of housing projects or retail associated with housing projects.
With the impact fees on.
Yeah, and we'll only be able to use impact fees. We wouldn't be able to use. Yes.
Sales tax.
Sales tax, yes, but not property taxes. Is that correct?
Does the state want to reserve the right for them to provide?
Sorry.
For them to provide incentives for businesses to go to state-owned land, but not municipalities?
I don't believe that's spoken to in the bill.
Is that a rhetorical question?
So they're keeping their right to incentivize.
Yes.
Yeah.
They want to be able to incentivize people to the point of the mountain and not let us compete.
Actually, if I could, I don't mean to debate with you. However, I will point out that the governor and legislative leadership all seems to think that we're incentivizing the wrong things. And so there seems to be a general movement of how should governments appropriately incentivize it. And there may be a double standard. However, I think the intent of HB 151 is more narrowly restricted to cities and counties.
Yeah,
the
theoretical problem they're trying to solve is us competing with neighboring cities for the same business.
Is GOED, which don't call themselves that anymore, is that still in
Trying to make
existence?
the prison idea pay
So
off.
basically, the prison sites still go.
Right, and they can still incentivize that, but they don't want us to.
They would have to come in under Draper, and so Draper wouldn't be able to incentivize it. Whether the state does is
Well, the state is.
it's up to theirs.
State land. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, thank
There's
you.
a whole complex MITA discussion that we'll save for another time.
But anyway, those are some of the issues percolating at the legislature this week.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't want to follow it, so I appreciate the update.
So, and then just to echo that, spent a lot of hours on the phone with neighboring mayors and Zoom calls on the Water and the Lake Commission, trying to figure out where the balance is for Utah County for that. Because you've got everything from Goshen with its small population to Provo, us, who've invested a lot into the shorelines of Utah Lake. But also today, on a little brighter note, we did have the area chamber luncheon today for the awards. Doug Meldrum and I were able to attend that today, and we were able to recognize a lot of businesses, but particularly Les Schwab Tires in Saratoga Springs, for their efforts in helping to support local school clubs and teams and that, and what they've done in the community, not for necessarily their job, but how they've benefited by working with other businesses around them to kind of be able to feed off each other to help grow. So, okay.
I'll go buy tires.
Mark, anything else from administration?
No, if the council would like any additional legislative updates, I'm happy to give it, but I'll let you talk to me offline so we don't support all these wonderful people.
Keep going once the recorded session. It's amazing. It's lively.
Yes.
Seriously, if you have problems sleeping, I recommend it.
If you think this meeting's bad, this is so much more exciting than that one, so.
Okay. Okay, we'll move to the work session portion, Saratoga Town Center.
For you this evening. My name is Ashley Hadfield, and I'm here. Huh? Okay, Dave's got me. Awesome. I'm here on behalf of the Saratoga Town Center project. And since we acquired this property in 2017, our main goal has been to create a viable center for Saratoga Springs residents that really meets the market demands. And tonight, I'd like to join with you to see if we can take a step forward in moving a parcel that has been sat vacant for 22 years in a prominent corner of the city. And so before I get into the actual site, I would like to talk to you about the retail market in Saratoga and how that's been impacted by the growth. And so going through that, I think we can all agree, and with the public hearing tonight, is that Saratoga Springs has seen tremendous growth since early 2000. And due to that, with retail, centers begin to shift and emerge depending on where the population is to be able to meet the needs. And so in early 2000, the epicenter of retail here in Saratoga Springs was right here located at Crossroad Boulevard and Redwood Road. And with the majoring anchors being Walmart and the old Smith's building. And that started to really shift once Smith's moved down or to the development that's now known as the Crossing. And if you want to flip down, Dave. Since then, we've had the introduction of Fat Cats to the community, Costco, which I love Costco, Intermountain, and University of Health is also coming and is slated to be coming here soon. And so if you want to flip down, this is kind of where the new epicenter of all retail and all the traction's really going to is at the Pioneer Crossing and Redwood Road, and I think it's a great development that's added a lot of benefit to the city. So that leaves us now with the old epicenter, or the old kind of retail center, and which is with our site. And when we came to acquire the site, we saw the trends that were going on. We knew that this was soon going to be a B location. And we kind of knew that in mind, and as we were going through, we were structuring what we were going to add to the community in this way. And when we started, and Dave, you want to flip down, we hired the top retail brokers who actually brought the Costco to Saratoga Springs to help us as we started working to this. And we've had conversations with Target, Home Depot, Lowe's, and other mid-box tenants. And the consensus keeps coming back that our site's too small and we're not near the retail gravity anymore for this site. And while we were having these conversations, we did do what we like to call as our science experiment, which is now known as the Legends building, which Legends have seen a lot of great success and they've loved being here. We have had just under half of this building sitting vacant for now almost for a year. And with that kind of science experiment, we've taken a step back and we've really re-looked at our plan of what really should be going here. So if you want to skip to the next slide. We've came to the understanding that really for this portion of the city is that the typical standard retail tenants that want to be here are about 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. And after kind of working through, we really feel like we can only fill about 25,000 square feet of this space in those typical retail settings. And right now, as you can see, we have about 5 buildings slated that would accommodate that need. These tenant mix is projected to be specialty gyms like the Legends Boxing, restaurants. We have been talking to a few, About Time's kind of one. And then mostly takeout and drive-through concepts like the fast chain have been really popular, and also beauty salons is the other look. So this kind of leaves us with the middle of the section of the property that in a standard retail development would be mid-box to big box uses. And as we've kind of taken a step back, and Dave, if you want to flip, we've really came to the market is really either saying multifamily or small business growth space is what the market's kind of demanding. And I'm here today proposing to move toward more of a small business growth space, as I know that tax revenue is important for the city and that this is a prominent center for the city as well. So if you want to skip down here. So what is small business growth space? And I know in other meetings the site has been brought up that it will be Amazon. And I'm here to tell you it's not going to be Amazon. This will either have as less or as much traffic as a standard big box or small box retail would include. And this is really going to be for the dreamers of Saratoga Springs. These are your moms who are starting their Etsy shops, who are wanting to get out of their garage, or it's the trampoline parks, the entertainment venues, or the cheer gyms, or the dance studios, which are really going to be going in here. So Dave, if you want to scoot down one more time. So what we're kind of here proposing is 2 buildings. They range from about 60 to 50,000 square feet. They'll be subdivided in 5,000 to 10,000 square feet spaces. And like I said, we're, after talking to brokers, this is really what the tenant mix is going to be in here. And we really like how, compared to a typical retail box, is that this will actually front those townhomes in the back and buffer it. Instead of having a truck court, they'll actually look to some storefronts and retail. And in preparation for this meeting today, I did come with a case study that's in the neighboring city of Lehigh, if you want to scoot down one more, which is known as the Pattern Building, and this is what this will look like. It looks like retail on the front, and then it'll kind of service these type of businesses, and this is seeing tremendous success in Lehigh, and the residents have really enjoyed it. And so with that, I look forward to kind of continuing this discussion of how to best serve the community, and love to answer any questions that you have regarding this.
Okay. Councilman Podesta?
Yeah, I appreciate this. I have a couple clarifying questions. So when you're talking about future tenants wanting the 1,200, 1,500 square foot space, how does that correlate with the proposed size of 5,000 to 10,000 square feet? Are those 2 separate?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what we've done is we've taken the standard retail, like regional commercial, more type of uses, and those are your nail salons, the takeout.
And are those the ones on the outer
Yeah, those
edge?
are those
Okay.
6 buildings, so that 25,000 square feet will be dedicated to those type of uses.
Okay. Another thing that's just kind of a point of information is on that Legend Boxing building. So a couple of the problems that I've heard from brokers on that location is, or not the location, but the building itself, is typically, because right now it's going for $32 a square foot. And so that's really pricey. And a lot of the future tenants, or those that are interested in it, are looking more for like a second generational kind of building to basically get it down to the $16 per square foot type of space.
Yeah.
Because when they're looking for that smaller space, they're looking for that kind of a budget, right?
Yeah, and I'll actually quote some facts, and I do have some flyers here of all the neighboring retail developments going on, is that in that crossings and other areas in Saratoga, drive-throughs are currently going for high 40s, is being marketed. Small shop space, which is this around what we're kind of talking about here, goes from high 40s or high 30s to low 40s. Is what it's getting quoted, and anything 5,000 to 7,000 is mid to high 30s. And so right now for that space, I'm way below what they're going to get below the down the street. And I agree with you, it's expensive space, but it is a new construction build. And with rising costs, I mean, I wish I could get into the watering meter business. It would be great. But it's just that's kind of where we have to be able to, just with all this inflation costs coming in, to be able to make it work.
And did they provide like any feedback on as far as like, instead of having those buildings around the edge, but having just larger retail that covers the whole space?
Yeah, some things is that a lot of the retail tenants like the end cap spaces because they get double signage, and they really actually want to be on the front of Redwood Road and Crossroads because there's the view corridors, and they rely on traffic and being on sight pass. And so that's why they're more aiming for that front half of the parcels, because that's really where they can get the signage that they need to be able to be viable.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm excited. Mayor's gone. I get to do this. First time ever. Councilman McComber?
Yeah, thank you. So on the buildings here, the ones that you're proposing, how many can be combined if like a big retailer or big company wanted to come in and can they buy the whole thing? Like, can they buy and rent 9 spaces and just fill in the whole space as one company?
I don't think I'd be a good business person if I said no to that. But we're trying to keep it smaller, is because really what we're going to with this is making sure that it goes to the dreamers of Saratoga. I mean, we really want to help kind of start these startups that are coming out of their garage, and also to these Etsy moms.
And I would love that. The reason why I asked the question is because you said it's not Amazon, but there's other companies like Amazon who are looking for distribution centers. And where we've been in trouble in the past is when we've approved some of these things, and then they do fill them in, and then it becomes just one big semi-trucks coming in and out constantly.
Yeah.
This is a very, very busy intersection. When we've had other companies, like even Walmart when they came in and others that have come in, we give them our time frames when the big trucks can come in, when they can, when the garbage trucks. I mean, Cafe Rio's their garbage trucks can only come between like 2 or 4 in the morning because with Vasa there and Cafe Rio. So the big white section there in the middle is what really concerns me, because that's where all your semi-trucks are going to be coming in to provide inventory to those companies. I love how, I do appreciate your spin a little bit where you're talking about like trampoline companies. That'd be great. I'd love to have the trampoline companies, but that's not what's coming. That's not what we're seeing the beg is. And I tell them, hey, you know, Eagle Mountain has all this land and they have a big industrial park area that would be great for you to have your distribution center. So Amazon and other companies, just for the people in the audience, are looking to have distribution centers, big ones, decent sized ones, all in your neighborhood so that they can do quicker delivery, which is great, but we don't want to kill all of our sales tax base with distribution because there's no sales tax there. It's the sales taxes on the point of sale or the point of purchase. So I think that that's my real concern, and to throw in a bunch more semi-trucks at the corner of where the Vasa corner, basically in the gas station there, where we have the One Medical Plaza coming into what would be the Neaters, et cetera. I do like the extra parking, of course, because Neaters already is parking on your dirt over there. We get 40 to 50 cars on the weekends parked on the dirt because there wasn't enough parking when Neaters came in, and we fought that. And so there's, I mean, Vasa, we fought that. Now Vasa's moving to Smith, so it's going to create some more draw. That big Vasa is going to create a lot of more center. And my last comment is we don't want the whole commercial district to be down by the Smiths, the new Smiths Marketplace. We want multiple centers, a Home Depot or a Lowe's, whether they come here or there. This is a decent spot, but I know they're looking at other locations as well. But if one goes somewhere else, the other one's going to come too. Look at American Fork, Home Depot on one side of the road, Lowe's. You go anywhere, they're like usually within 10 minutes of each other, 5 minutes of each other. They gravitate to each other. And so I personally think that the idea of the businesses, you know, how it was zoned with the commercial around the perimeter is great. And you know, finding a box, Winco or you know, something like that maybe, I don't know, like a Home Depot or Lowe's, work with them. Target would be fantastic. Target would love this location. Target is actually going for not the big space anymore. They went into Provo on State Street, and now not Bulldog, it's Cougar Way, because Provo High School moved. But they put that Target in there, and it's been extremely successful. And so I think that, you know, working with our economic development team, they were talking to lots of people. They can work with you and help you. But I personally am not just giving you straight feedback, because I don't want you to go down a path and spend a bunch of money and then get a no. So for me, I would like to see this continuing as is, and the market will demand what the market will demand. And I appreciate you coming in, so thank you.
Can I respond to a couple of things from you? I will say, in conversations with Target, Home Depot, and Lowe's, their minimum acreage requirement is 13 to 14 acres. And right now, this site where that center section is, it's 9 to 10. And so I've talked to them directly.
Well, 9 to 10 when you take out with your other buildings, but if it's 16.
Yeah, well, it's 10,
17.
and then even if I give them that portion, I still only get 11, 12. So in the past,
I've been on the council for 12 years. I actually was here when the McDonald's came in. It's 16. So it's 16. You have all the other buildings that you want to put in, which is great because there's money there. But if you did just do the one box, you have 16 acres. I don't want to get in an argument here, but I mean, I have been in this city, I've been sitting in this chair for 12 years. Yeah. And I actually approve the Neaters, approve the McDonald's, approve the Medical Plaza. I know this area well. And so, you know, we went through a recession, We also went through COVID, and nobody was building anything anywhere. So you say, it's been sitting since December of 21. I would never open or buy a spot during COVID to start a business. One of my dear friends, Sean's barbecue, closed yesterday because COVID killed it. So why would somebody want to rent? And I apologize, it's a tough economy, right? It's a tough time. Why would somebody want to come in and rent next to a boxing when they have no idea what the governments, federal governments, state governments are going to force? In Saratoga Springs, we've never forced anything. It's always been at the state level. We believe that people have a freedom to choose for themselves what they want to do. But at the state, they've imposed mandates. They've imposed these things, and it affected companies. Sean's Barbecue's gone. And so, it's a tough time right now.
Thank you, sorry. Councilman Carn?
Yeah, this is a work session, so just so people here know, it's more of a back and forth, give and take. This is a landowner coming to get our feedback.
We're not making a decision.
Yeah, there's no decision tonight on this. So I have the exact same concerns that Councilman Comer does. The last thing I'd want to do, and you even admitted yourself, if a mid-size distribution company came in who wants to distribute auto parts regionally in Utah County, they could come in and rent all 9 spots on one side, and all of a sudden we're going to have delivery vehicles in and out of there all the time. And what?
And no sales
tax. Yeah. So that is a major concern of mine. And I also agree that we do not want all of our retail industry centered in one location. I think it's good to have it spread out. I'd like to see it continue to be somewhat spread out. I know that as we are creating our general plan, that is the feedback, that we give, that if we condense everything into one spot, it creates traffic issues. And this is currently zoned for regional commercial. It is on our land use map as regional commercial, which are two different maps. One's a governing document, one's a guidance document. And this project would be asking for a legislative decision to rezone this to office warehouse, which I know we have so much demand and so many interested parties in large office warehouse developments in our city. I just don't know if we need more at this point. We've got a lot of places that are going to be office warehouse, and I don't know if we need more. That's my feedback. Thank you.
Councilman Porter?
So I appreciate the comments of the two councilmen, or 3 councilmen that preceded me, I guess. His was more questions than comments. I guess, I understand the concern and agree with the concern about a single large user coming in. That is something that I don't think would fit well in this area. However, I do, and to Councilman Carn's point, we need regional commercial uses. A lot of the uses that you're talking about, these small businesses, are regional commercial uses. They're just looking for a slightly different form factor than the 1,000 square foot, T-Mobile store next to Smith's. They want a slightly bigger floor plan so that they can provide a service or provides an amenity that we don't have in our city currently. Trampoline parks, the bouncy house gyms. These are things that I constantly have people in my neighborhood like, why can't we have a kangaroo zoo in Saratoga Springs? And there's just not a place to put that, right? So I think that some of the concerns might be addressed by. First off, the office warehouse zone doesn't really exist anymore. We're going to be splitting it up into several zones, and so I think perhaps one of the less intense zones, more of like a Class B office that this kind of is built off of, would be more appropriate than what our old office warehouse looks like. I would like, and if we could, if the developer was interested in perhaps pulling some of the uses that are currently allowed in the office warehouse zone, like a distribution center or something like that, off the table voluntarily through a development agreement or something like that. We could limit what types of uses are going to go in here so that we are getting those more retail, small business uses rather than a distribution center. And so I think there's a way where this is meeting the need of both the market, which, I mean, a lot of it was talked about. We do have a lot of office warehouse type products coming in, but they're much more the traditional office warehouse products. We do need this small business incubator space where, I mean, you said yourself, this is, these are going to be able to go for something like 30, or in the range of 30 a square foot, which is, quite a bit cheaper than the more traditional retail strip mall sites, right?
Yes, and that.
And so that gives somebody an opportunity to get in at a level that they can afford, as opposed to having to buy this premium retail space when they are just running an Etsy shop or selling craft supplies or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the margin to be able to afford. So I'm interested in at least looking at what possibilities are out there. You guys would have to look at your business model and see if you're able to limit your uses, or if you need that wide flexibility, maybe that. But I think we need to have that conversation. I do share the concerns of having a lot of traffic. This is already a really congested, so a lot of truck traffic in this area would not be ideal. But I think some of these uses are much less truck traffic intensive, right? I mean, the dance studio might get one shipment a month.
We can't control what goes in.
We can control the uses that are allowed.
But if we create these zones, the different zone, whatever's allowed in there, they can come in.
They can voluntarily, through a development agreement, say, we're not going to allow this use.
Kevin's been telling us the development agreements are being challenged.
But with Murphy Oil, because of the concern for trucks, we limited the hours that trucks could come.
Right. And I'm fine with that too. I'm just saying, like, if we can limit the uses so that we're not getting something that is a UPS, drop distribution center, and it is, a dance studio is going to get one shipment a month of tutus and ballerina shoes, and that's all they need. It's not going to be driving a lot of truck traffic. So I just, and we'd have to have legal weigh in if we can't do development agreements anymore, but I think that there's a need for a place for small businesses to be able to locate. And that isn't something that we've seen or that we've been able to meet that need in our city quite yet. So I guess that's my 2 cents.
Well, I'll keep my comments relatively brief. I mean, I've had a preview of this before, and I know when we had a larger discussion with the Planning Commission and the council, we were talking about major distribution centers coming into the office warehouse zone, and this was slipped kind of in the middle. And everyone, mine included, vehement reaction at the time is, heck no, we can't have this anywhere. But this is not, like, in my mind, consistent. It could turn into it if there wasn't the right parameters in place and limitations, and that's a future discussion anyway that we can't resolve right now. But I mean, regardless of where we go on this is one thing that I'd like staff to look at is when we're revising the code is making sure that we have a space in the city, a zone for appropriate zone around the terminology I think you were using was a small business incubator.
Yeah.
And I think that's a appropriate type of use somewhere where you're going to have some of this stuff. I think on the concept, the traffic, there would need to be some things worked through, but.
For me, just piggy on that, Stephen, because I want to be supportive of thinking outside the box. You'd have to get rid of that big section in the middle where all the big trucks come in, because like a dance studio, the trampoline company, you don't need that. No. And so you could have like 4 or 5 buildings that are spaced around in there, and then you have parking around them. Because the way it's designed now, like UPS drools, Amazon drools, if they see it like this. This is exactly what they would want. And so for you, I agree with you. If we want to, and Chris, if we want to think outside the box, then we need to design something that's going to appeal to those types of businesses and not just a bunch of semis.
Yeah, and if I can just kind of interject a little bit, I do think one thing, some of these have docks on them, which does kind of go to the more distribution centers. And I think one thing as a development group, if we came back with this as more of a grade door, because that's not the major distribution centers where they have major trucks once you go into the grade door.
Because then you're dealing with vans more.
Yeah, and so
that is meeting what you guys are talking about. This is designed with the trucks going up to the big.
You know, and I would say, and I didn't think about that before, is if there wasn't some particular limitation around how big a site could be, if someone could come in and knock down the walls, you know, I guess you could make them load bearing to make it physically impossible, but we'd rather not rely on construction drawings. That would be problematic, but regardless, I think something like this, if it's not here, it ends up not being here, there needs to be something in code that would allow for this, because we're going from, I don't want to go from office warehouse where we have distribution centers to nothing where this wouldn't work anywhere in the city.
Don't we have what we're talking about being developed today and approved up on Redwood Road, though? Some of those types of uses?
Yeah. It's much more industrial.
Is it?
It's vinyl industries and.
Well, yeah, and if I could jump in, yeah, there are some current zoned areas of office warehouse which are approved for your typical office warehouse flex building. You did away with that code under a pending ordinance, and so we have a draft now. Right now, the working term is heavy commercial, which would allow something similar to this, but there are going to be some parameters of maximum building size, building height, square footage, minimum square footage of office or retail component with it. And so that's in a draft form now. Sarah has drafted that up, and so we're in the process now of reviewing that. I'll come back to you shortly.
Well, make sure you communicate with them as well, because I'm sure you have building size to prevent the taking over of 9 units in a row and things like that. These are conversations. So you're coming in on a conversation that we've been having for months, right? And so it's always tricky. But I do agree, we need to have the place for a dance studio, the karate places, the trampoline places and stuff. But I just don't think this design is what, and to your point, with the docks that you can actually pull the big semis up next to. So I think that you've gotten some good feedback.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what you said is, I think in the past we've had trouble with our, not retail, but commercial zones because, I've harped on this a lot, but, people keep coming in and saying we can't build what we need to build under this code. So I really hope that you can reach out and figure out what the market is asking for, so that when we are approving code, it's code that the market can use, not just code that, this is what the planning handbook says. It needs to be something that an actual business can build under.
Yeah, to reiterate it, we just approve something to change a zone as long as it's exactly the same building that would have been allowed in the other zone with just some very minor tweaks. I don't remember what it might have been the difference of 2 parking spots or something like that. So I completely would agree with that point, because we don't want to go from, hey, basically anything goes really in that office warehouse zone to like, hey, nothing's going to really work. So.
Well, and like we agreed to let Vasa go into the old Smiths, even though we lost all that retail space, because we're not going to get a lot of retail money off of a Vasa, but it's a need, if we're filling a need. And so it's not that we're inflexible, we just want to make sure that we're making decisions. Chris says it, we all say it every time when we're saying prayer and we're talking amongst the group, we want to make decisions that benefit today and for the next 30 years, because we can make a quick buck now, great, no. We want to be able to make sure that we're doing something that's going to benefit the city for 20 and 30 years to come. And that's one reason why the lake is such a hot topic, because they're trying to make quick money now, but they're not looking at the impact this is going to take for 30 to 50 years. And that's why it's frustrating and scary to people. And we always are looking at the long term, so appreciate that.
And Councilman Comer, the layout as it's designed today, that's exactly where I take my motorcycle in Taylorsville to get fixed.
Yeah, just like that.
Just like that. Yep. And I don't think that's the right use for that
That's
area.
not what we're looking for. And I don't think that's really what you're looking for.
No, and honestly, I thank you for your feedback. And really what we're going for is these uses that are down here. And that's what we're aiming for attracting, because these are kind of the retail uses that we're seeing post-COVID, like you mentioned too, of really kind of being sustainable. So I think with that, we will take this back with those comments that you've given, and then we'll resubmit based on that with some of those changes as well.
Perfect.
you so
Thank you
much.
for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. The internal accessory dwelling units.
We made it the consent item?
We're getting there.
I made the mistake of telling my wife I'd be home by like 7:30. That was my mistake.
Okay,
Whenever I do that, I was.
You jinxed us, huh?
I jinxed us. Sorry.
Yeah, you got your marching orders.
Yes.
Make it quick.
Just waiting. Okay, so in front of you is a paper copy, and we also have on the screen the most recent iteration of the direction that was given by council to look at some amendments to our IADU map, the internal accessory dwelling units map. So rather than calling it exempted areas, which is following the verbiage of the state code, we're looking at it so it's more clearly identified by the layperson as prohibited areas, prohibited for the development or use of IADUs. So we have identified those properties that are currently developed in the community for
Basement apartments, I'm sorry, just to help, because we talk in terms of acronyms, and so I'm just trying to help the residents. This is people living upstairs and wanting to rent to a stranger in their basement, because right now you can rent to a family member in your own, if it's someone in your family in your basement. This is a stranger.
Internal accessory.
Internal, within your, like, in your house. Yeah.
Right. Versus any accessory dwelling unit, which could be a cottage in your backyard or something like that.
Above a garage, external.
Or above garage, right. So we have identified, and this map reflects development as of October 1st of last year. So recognizing this is just a draft at this point and wanting to see if this is the direction the council wants to go. If so, then we will update the development areas, those homes that are currently under construction that would be included in here. Those properties that may have been platted or began construction with building permits pulled since October of last year, we would want to include that in the same type of area. So we will definitely update that. It wouldn't change the map a lot. It would just be adding on here and there to some of those areas. So the red identifies those areas which are eligible for otherwise based upon our requirements for eligibility for an IADU. Lot sizes 6,000 square foot up in a single family developed residential area. So that's identified in red, and then we've got the black areas which are developed or platted non-single family, so that could be there could be a lot of things that fit into that category. Then we also identified those other areas in the community by green or yellow that could potentially allow for residential but are currently not developed. So that kind of shows you the breakdown throughout the community. And then the light gray would represent other types of uses that are non-residential, commercial, or otherwise. So you'll see on the bottom of that map, it shows the prohibited parcels total acreage is about 17% of the residential areas in the community.
If you can just maybe again help them, because we have a lot of guests, we don't usually get as many guests, it's sort of fun. Can you help them understand this is a state mandate, unfunded mandate from the state legislature forcing, because Saratoga Springs, the entire city was no basement apartments. Because then when everyone moved here for the last 25 years, everyone knew if you did your homework that you weren't allowed to rent your basement. Does that mean people didn't rent their basements? Yeah, people did, but they were breaking the ordinance, right, the city ordinance. Can you just maybe give like a 2-minute spiel on what the state and what percentage we can have?
Yeah, so the state allows all communities to set aside or exempt 25% of the residential areas from the state requirement to allow for accessory dwelling units or internal accessory dwelling units. So the council last fall adopted a map which created certain areas that are considered exempt, or in other words, prohibit the construction or use of IADUs. So that map is currently in place, and we could pull that up if necessary. But that was based on several criteria, one of which was asking the HOAs if they wanted to be a part of that exempted area or not. There were some concerns about that process, the influence of that for HOAs, and so the council decided to have us look at another basis here. So we have included the entire developed community, or the entire residential developed community, into these areas. And then looking forward to the future, anything that's not currently constructed could potentially qualify for
And we still have
IADUs.
8% leeway for
Right.
future developments if they choose to. The reason why there's concerns is we didn't build these neighborhoods to allow for multifamily housing. We don't have parking for it, we don't have the roads, the sewer systems, we just didn't plan for it. I mean, and that's not a problem. We have areas in our city where we have planned for that. And so just
lot of
puts and then water access, I mean, there's so many things that go into this, because if you turn a neighborhood in, that was a single family neighborhood, into 25% multifamily neighborhood, then you'd be really upset, because not only would they have multifamily homes behind you, your neighbor would be a multifamily home, right? So that's the whole point is we're trying to be true to what the residents' expectations were when they came into the city, just like your expectations at Edge, right? What you thought were your expectations. People moving into Saratoga Springs thought that they were not going to live next to a bunch of people renting out their basements. And so we were just doing our best, and the mayor is pretty passionate about this, and I appreciated his leadership, because this map is superior to what we dealt with a few months ago. I really appreciate all of the effort and work that's gone into this. I think it's very precise. It's following the state mandate. And I can't even imagine how much money has gone on in the state, because I know we've spent a lot of money in our city to try and do this. And again, an unfunded mandate from the state legislature. So thank you.
Right. And I should maybe also mention, and in your packet, it came just recently today, this morning, I believe it was, a letter of a firm representing the Fox Hollow neighborhood, who were included in the exempted or the prohibited areas in our last map. They are now wanting to not be included in that. In other words, they would like to be allowed or permitted to have IADUs.
That was a question I had, is and this does not reflect that?
It doesn't.
Because
This does not reflect that.
Because of how recently that came in. I guess one of my biggest concerns, and I mean, the rest of the council knows where I stand on this, so I'm not going to rehash our conversation from last fall. But the concern I have is Fox Hollow HOA did what their job is to represent their residents, and they came forward and said, hey, we want to be pulled off this map. I don't live in an HOA. I don't have a board that can make that determination as far as whether or not our CCNRs allow it. How do I exempt my neighborhood? We don't have a method for that.
Well, I suppose the method would be that you could gather together signatures on a petition of sorts and attach that to a request to amend the map.
Right. So how do I amend how do I do that? Because do I have to get 50% of my neighborhood if the north half of my neighborhood doesn't want to have them? Do I just redraw the line to be my street? Do I redraw the line so it's me and my next door neighbor because we don't want to allow them, or we want to be able to do it? Like, there's no...
Mark, I think Mark's got an answer.
As soon as he's done.
No, I just saying there's no process for non-HOAs to do that.
And thank you. I think that is a great point. We would be happy, I mean, since we are still working on this amendment, if there is a suggestion that you'd like to make that says X number of homes, it needs to be a block, it needs to be something like that. Because to that end, if we're amending the map and if we're looking at this, now would be a great time to try and come up with a procedure. Because to your point, does that include all of Toguayo, or does it include all of Mount Saratoga? I mean, what is it including in that exempt in-out discussion? So we can certainly do a better job of amending that process. Is there a preference for what that looks like?
I think it's got to be more of a majority of the homeowners, because the areas we've identified are either the HOAs that people bought under the pretense of single-family resident dwelling.
Sure.
The non-HOA bought under that same pretense when they purchased their home for single-family homes. So to have one neighbor bitch and moan to all ends and have a whole neighborhood change, you've got to have a majority, 90%, 80% greater, willing to give up the right they all purchased in an area.
I have to push back on that, Mayor, I'm sorry, but the right they purchased was not that they could not have a basement apartment in their home. When in America, when you buy property, you're allowed to use it the way you want. Zoning comes in and CC&Rs come in and people voluntarily give up that right. But we are the point of the point of local government, let me finish my thought and then I'll let you respond. The point of local government is to protect people's property rights, and we are taking away property rights from individuals who did not sign up for it. And even if they bought here 20 years ago thinking, hey, maybe, this is what's allowed currently, when you buy outside of an HOA, you take a risk that laws are going to change. The CC&Rs, people pay to live in HOAs, so they have CC&Rs because they feel those protect them. I purposefully bought outside of an HOA, realizing I was running the risk that something like this was going to happen. It's frustrating to me that I'm having my rights taken, and a lot of people in our city are having their rights taken away simply because that's, what we've decided to do.
See, and I disagree, because when you purchase, like you said, your land, you have the right to do with your property what you want, but you also had the right to purchase in a single-family zoned area or purchase in a duplex multifamily area. You had that right, and you made the choice with the purchase of your home in a single-family residential zone if you had done your homework.
And your title said you could.
And your title said it was that. So we're protecting that. If the majority want to change it, that's their God-given right in America to change it.
But you're saying 80%, even an HOA doesn't need 80% to change their CC&R.
Well, I just threw out numbers.
They need a supermajority. You need a supermajority.
Supermajority.
So it's 2/3.
2/3.
Mayor and Council, if I could offer perhaps a suggestion, and I realize that there's deep feelings on this amongst a lot of the council and the community and other things. How would you feel if we took and we did it by plats? And so, for example, typically when a plat is recorded, there's a certain number of homes that come in with that plat. What if it was a majority? Again, I'm looking to try and find options for everybody.
That is regulating it and communicating and then code enforcement.
And I think, like in my particular neighborhood there, I think there's 26 plats.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have one plat of 50 homes allows it, the next plat of 30 does not, the next plat of 70 does.
It could be.
Enforcement could be challenging.
It could be. Again, if you're going for the entire, let's say, subdivision, that could be a very high number. If you go on a smaller plat, then at least you know what the target is. And again, from an enforcement standpoint, yes, it would be more difficult to enforce, but I think if you look at generally the trend, it's, it's not as if we're going to see 10,000 applications tomorrow.
Sure.
During the time that we were kind of looking at this, I believe we received a couple inquiries, but no applications to create IADUs in
But
the
the
city.
thing is, it's 30 years, Mark, again.
I completely understand.
UVU wants to come to Saratoga Springs. As soon as UVU gets here, then all of a sudden, renting your basement to a bunch of students is going to become more popular. We're going to see more requests. I just think that when people bought in Saratoga Springs, it said on your title, you had to sign it, you had to agree that you would, if you finish your basement, you put a kitchen in, you had to agree that you would not rent that to a non-family member. People, this is not a hidden thing. This has been in the city for 25 years.
And again, all we're asking as staff is if there is a desire to make a change, then just give us kind of clear direction so we know how to paint the box so that it meets the expectations of the majority of the council.
I think it's obvious that there's not a majority wanting to change as much as I would like to change it, but I think there needs to be a process for people who don't live in an HOA.
So I heard a supermajority here.
I also want to, and I'm not going to soapbox this, but this is a state unfunded mandate that they're shoving down our throats. And I've used some pretty colorful language in this meeting before to describe what's going on here. That said, I would like staff to, if council agrees, to look at the unvested or unvested properties in our city. And I want to look at our code. And when someone brings in a project, they need to have wider roads. They need to have greater sewer capacity. This needs to become, frankly, more expensive for the development community, which will be passed on to homeowners.
It's the opposite effect.
It's the opposite effect of what they're going for, because it's going to get more expensive to develop the land now.
Visitor parking.
They need visitor
Oh,
parking. They
I mean,
need to-
Ivory's
they-
done
we-
it. They advertise their new development with everybody has an
We
apartment.
need to make sure we're protecting future developments that come into the city to have all this potential based
capacity, water
sewer,
capacity.
everything. It's going to be more expensive. All of a sudden, you're going to pay more for your home because the development community is going to have to pay for that and pass it along. And I'd like staff to come back and look at the areas that need a new code developed.
A road cross section.
Right, our road cross sections need to be bigger because everyone's gonna be parking on the streets. This code from the state says they have to have one off-street parking. You put 4 people in the basement apartment, they all live with one car? No, they're all parking on the street. This is a problem, and our streets need to be wider. We need to have more visitor parking in neighborhoods.
It's a safety
I'm
thing.
sorry,
It's a safety
it
thing.
is.
It's a
I'm
fire-
sorry that it's gonna be painful and more expensive, but this is the state's deal. And if the people don't like it, change your legislatures.
Councilman Wilden?
So going back to a couple different points, I agree, should be a process. I would suggest by development, that's similar how an HOA is represented. So let's not give.
Development, don't get to the.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare, and I think development makes sense in areas like we identified, just like you do an HOA. I know we have some letter from Fox Hollow. I think we need to make sure that's really authentic.
We need to make sure that it's actually the board or not.
Yeah, not the board, not one individual. If it's the entire board, well, I shouldn't say a unanimous vote, but if the board, it's a resolution that they've paid, or they pass, not paid. Yeah, then I'm like completely supportive of that. As far as the percentage, I'm not gonna get there, but it needs to be by the development, and I think following kind of, what was it, 66% or whatever, similar to stuff in the. Supermajority in the national level. I think that's fair. And I had some other comments, but I've kind of spaced it for a minute.
Since it's an open discussion, the reason we have to do that
He's on mute.
is you can't have an entire neighborhood with 100 homes and then have 17 of them opt out, because enforcement becomes next to impossible. It's just, it's gotta be areas, right? It's gotta be areas.
Yeah.
And that's why, to the point, if they want to opt out, it needs to be a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with also the prior comment, looking at, increasing road widths where it's applicable. One thing I want to throw out there is certain older neighborhoods that are built with smaller roads. Harvest Hills being one of them, I think, the mayor's neighborhood's one of them, Loch Lomond, some of those other places. If they have smaller standards than it is today, I don't want them to have an option to opt out. Because that becomes a fire, unless the police, or not police chief, but the fire chief, unless he disagrees, I'll fully support him. But if we measure in some of these older neighborhoods like Harvest or, what's your neighborhood? Benches and Hills, where if there was regular on-street parking, it became a safety issue, then I don't think that should be allowed to opt out from a safety
And
and
it will be
soundness
on-street
perspective.
parking. Don't kid ourselves.
Well, I haven't gotten my traffic engineering degree from Facebook like many, yet.
Because even Chris Porter's neighborhood, they all park on Talus Ridge Boulevard and they go through the side gate door into their basement.
Well, I know, but where I'm going is I don't have my engineering certificate yet on Facebook. I'm working on it tomorrow. But whatever the fire chief supports, that's what I would back. Because if he says he's comfortable with it, then I'm fully comfortable. But if he's not and says this will cause a hazard in these different neighborhoods.
You gotta get a ladder truck down the road.
Because the cross sections are too small, I think that needs to be there. Because I'm looking at it from a safety perspective, but other areas that have much wider roads, I don't want to pick on a neighborhood. That's not a safety concern, and having an opt-out provision makes sense. So I think even though some people in very condensed neighborhoods might really want that, it's not the right thing to do for their neighbors' protection from a fire perspective.
Our attorney has a comment.
I just wanted to let you know that this is a legislative decision, and so you, as a council, have broad authority to decide whether or not to include or exclude a neighborhood or individual from the area where IADUs would be prohibited. So it's a legislative decision. You're going to be given a lot of deference, and the standard is whether you have a it's reasonably debatable that it promotes the public interest. So.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I haven't looked at the body of the code, but we do have the ability to require some off-street parking, some other things relative to this. We do also, I believe, there is a standard that limits the maximum road width for a local cross-section. I believe that was going through the legislature, was that last year, Priscilla?
I remember seeing something on that recently.
It's wider than what we currently have, if I remember.
It is wider than what we currently have. But I just wanted you to be aware that whatever that parameter is.
Of course they are, because they know what they're doing, and so now they're trying to protect themselves from having to have huge asphalt costs.
So,
Right.
Can I go back, though? I don't want any to be on record. I wasn't assuming that Villages was sending in a falsified, statement. I'm not accusing anyone of that. But I think if we're taking something from an HOA, I don't want it a blanket email. It may need to be signed by the board members and notarized or something like that. We need to be extra careful if we're accepting direction
Or
for a
representative of their
neighbor.
management company.
Yes,
I
so
would
you're
say
looking
not
for
the management company.
For basically legal documentation. of
Yes,
it. And-
legal documentation.
and This was sent by the attorney's firm that represents their board, so we'll just verify with the HOA, yes, this was sent on your behalf.
Yes, so actually, a couple of things on that. So if we're talking about trying to create a standard for non-HOAs to have a majority rule of what they want to do that, I'd want that same benefit for HOAs. Because
They have an elected board.
right, but there's been times where, so for example, I used to be the HOA president of Villages. And there's been a couple things where, as a board, we didn't want to vote on, and so we sent it out to the residents to vote on it. And the results were different than what the board was expecting. And so leaving something up to that where it's dealing with everybody's house, because one of those was rentals, limiting the amount of rentals in the neighborhoods, right? And so seeing the residents came out and voted in favor or against that, they had that right because it's for their property. I don't think it's good for a board on this level to vote for the rentals on that. And so leaving it up to the residents, because like to Councilman Porter's comment earlier, is non-HOAs don't have that board to represent them. So why are they having to go out and get 2/3 when an HOA doesn't have to?
Well, I respect that. I respect that opinion. I also think that these neighborhoods have elected officials, if they like them or not. That's their representative government locally, and they represent those neighborhoods.
But it's something permanent, though. They can't change it later on with a new board.
Well, can they? Why not? Why not?
Well, that's the question with the state. When we put this in, is it locked in by the state?
No, again, so long as there's that 25%, we don't exceed that maximum 25% for the housing. So again,
That's fluid throughout this whole.
When I talked with the league, who was very involved with this, they anticipated in the legislators that were responsible for the creation of this legislation understood that this was somewhat of a fluid thing. And so again, I think we have pretty broad discretion, as Fred pointed out. And really, we just would like to craft whatever it is you'd like us to craft. We'd just like to understand that. So if I could kind of maybe break down a couple of issues.
Well, so the last point that I just wanted to make was, I think any neighborhood that is opting out needs to pass all infrastructure needs. So that's including water, sewer, street. And so if they meet those requirements, meaning capacity, then I'm fine with them opting out of that. Does that make sense?
Opting back in to allow?
To allow IEDs.
I think that's similar to what I was saying.
But you're saying streets, but I'm saying all infrastructure, the water and sewer.
Yeah. I don't know how you forecast that.
Well, they forecast it in building developments. Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I'll work on it. I'll get it.
So as far as the process goes, I'm hearing entire neighborhood. I'm hearing a 66%. What I heard Ryan say, but I'm not sure if everyone else is there, is the residents would need to vote in an HOA to do that. Is there any support for continuing that?
I'm in favor of letting boards represent neighborhoods.
Same.
Okay, so the board can represent that issue. What other issues? Off-street parking, obviously look at that issue, and then.
Hey, Mark, sorry, I'm in favor of letting member represented boards represent neighborhoods. If a developer controls the board, maybe that needs to be looked at.
I don't know if you differentiate that.
So, I don't know how you differentiate that, because now you're denying the declarants.
No, so Chris, once the developer's out and the members are in charge, then they can fix it if they need to.
Okay.
But again, going forward, what the map does today, minus Fox Hollow as that comes out, is we're going to be somewhere around 15%, which means an additional 10% at some point could continue to try and opt out. However, the default coming in is that IADUs are allowed going forward with future developments unless they choose to back themselves out.
Right, and a new code.
And, okay, and new development standards.
Yep.
For street widths.
And the other thing, maybe you already mentioned it, to put on your notes, Mark, is looking at existing neighborhoods, if their street dimensions are too small right now, or the sewer, or whatever.
Fire chief sign off on
Any opt-outs?
any opt-out.
Fire chief and engineers.
Fire chief, the fire marshal, I guess that's his fire marshal.
Fire marshal and engineers.
Okay. As far as engineers go, I think, I don't know that we're going to have a whole lot to say on that, but.
I think it's more the fire marshal.
Okay. I think we've got direction.
Perfect.
If
Thank
we
you.
have any further issues, we'll bring those back for your discussion.
Mayor, can I move to approve the consent items?
You bet.
There's a request to move
He wants to pull one off.
Okay.
number 2. Is
Okay.
that all right, Mayor? I mean, if you say no, I'll vote no.
Go
so.
for it.
I'll second.
I haven't made a motion.
Oh,
Chris is going to make a motion. He just wants number 2 pulled.
I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent items, removing number 2 from the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Carn, second from Councilman Porter. Carn?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Tedesca?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Consent calendar item 2, Canton Ridge West.
Mayor, may I just share my concern, then we can go through it real quickly. On that particular development, there's a slide, and I don't know if you can pull it up, where there's about a 1-acre park that says to be dedicated to the city. Typically, we don't accept more than 5 acres. I discussed this with our city manager, Mark Christensen.
Less
There's
than 5 acres, yeah.
Less than 5 acres, sorry. Did I say more than?
Yeah.
We never accept more than 5, no. We don't accept less than 5 acres. I know there's a potential for a greater park lineage in there, but that hasn't been finalized, so I'm not in favor of accepting that park into the city at this time.
It's my understanding that that park is not part of our master park plan.
Potentially could be.
Could be, but it's not currently.
It's not currently, and it is something that the council has not decided upon. So if you could, with your motion, approve the item, making that park an HOA park, and just leave it at that. And then if when the rest of the plans come in, they want to amend that at that point, that could be handled at that point.
So one of the things I want to give as feedback is the power corridor. I don't want a big trail system and running system under there. I want natural open space because it's not safe. It's not, this is the big power corridor.
High power transit.
High power transmission where you hear the buzz, that bzzz, because there's so much power. You don't live under it. You shouldn't really be exercising under it. And so I don't really want to have this be a big, so this was potentially a trailhead corridor for that. And so I agree with you, Stephen. I don't see this as really meeting the long-term needs of the city from our trail corridor system.
Yeah. And I don't know the entirety of the rest, but that's why I was clarifying at this time. But for me, seeing it was under a power corridor, that's probably unlikely in the future. And can I just share some general feedback on the consent items? I really like it, but if there's particular items where we're accepting property or we're getting rid of property or whatever, that we don't have those on the consent items. Because, while I do read through them, that's something easy to miss. And so the planner going through it, hey, we're going to accept this property or do whatever. I know there's some stuff that's real basic, so I'm not saying let's bring every plat
No,
to the
but
council.
Stephen, I agree with you, because really the consent calendar is supposed to be things that we've looked at before and we've had maybe multiple times, and it's supposed to like just push it.
Non-controversial.
Yeah,
I appreciate you pulling that because I missed it.
Yeah.
Looking through it. So
I like that idea, Stephen.
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve consent item number 2, except with the staff findings and conditions, but the identified park not being dedicated to the city, it'll remain with the HOA.
And I second that.
Okay, I have a first from Councilman Wilden, second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion? Porter?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Pedeska?
Aye.
Didn't we get finished by 8?
Okay, business item 1, North Shore.
Shouldn't we put 2 before that to make Chriselle wait? I'm teasing.
So if I could, I'll be brief. What this is just cleaning up some property along the edge of 2300, if I'm not mistaken. And 6 inches to 1/10 of an inch is what we're talking about. I think that's the most romantic parts of what this does. Unless anyone else has any further items, we'd appreciate a motion from the council.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve business item 1 with all staff findings and conditions.
Second.
I have a first from Councilman Porter, second from Councilman McComber. Any further discussion? Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Pedeska?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Way to clean up your books. There you go.
2.5 hours for 30 seconds.
6 inches of sidewalk.
I really wanted to get into within a half an inch or something like that, but.
Intermountain Saratoga plat amendment.
Dave's got that.
This is around the road, right? This is all about the road, right?
Mayor and Council, real quickly, there is one thing Fred just brought up. Did you actually vote on the consent calendar?
Yes.
The first one
Except
we
for
did.
First one you did? Okay.
We did
Again,
all the consent and
everything
pulled
but
2
2.
off.
We just wanted to make sure that we heard it correctly, so thank you. Continue, Dave.
If you didn't get that, that's what we.
Mayor and council, this is simply just a plat amendment to pick up the rest of Exchange Drive. It wasn't initially called out when this plat was approved a few years ago, so this is a plat amendment to dedicate that portion to the city.
Do we have an idea on when it will be constructed?
We'll ask Rick, but we're
That was my
reviewing, we
question.
just approved construction plans, drawings for the IHC site plan today.
For the residents, this connects like Costco and all that area with where the liquor store is
Walmart.
and Walmart. It
Yeah.
connects that, so you don't have to go to Redwood or up and around.
Let's do the full circle.
It's a great, because it's going to make those other businesses more successful, but this is another north-south connection. That's why we're excited about it.
Do we have any idea on when that would be constructed?
We hope, based on what I understand, with the approval we received at 5 o'clock today, we have everything in place to apply for a pre-construction meeting for the site work. As I understand it, the only thing we're lacking well, we're not lacking anything, that the bond calculations have been submitted by the city attorney to Intermountain Healthcare, but the execution of those bonds is not required to get a pre-construction meeting. Is that, as you understand?
That's correct.
So short term is what we're hearing in the near
So
future.
are we, I mean,
This build season.
I was saying this build season, we're gonna have this road?
This asphalt season, so.
It's probably, this asphalt, I haven't run that by the contractor. So we hope to schedule a pre-construction meeting tomorrow. Jacobson Construction has completely bid the project. Sunrock Excavation has their machinery waiting at city limits. As soon as we get the go-ahead, we're going. And it'll take a year start to finish.
Right.
Now, it's a good question, this asphalt season, I would say yes.
We all wanna bring our kids' broken arms to the new IHC, but I really wanna drive on that road. I mean, I'd rather have the road and take my kid out of the city.
So basically by September, October, hopefully we get the
We're at a
road.
critical time here. We very much appreciated the planning Planning and zoning and engineering this past few weeks has really jumped all over this thing, and we're
Thank
just
you.
hoping we really need this pre-construction meeting to happen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, we're going to vote for it, so we'll get you one step closer here.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Intermountain Saratoga plat amendment. Rick Fryricks applicant. Were there, and staff findings and conditions.
I'll second
I have a
that.
first from Councilman McComber, second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion on the motion? McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Tedesca?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes. Do we have a need for closed session?
No, Jeremy, you know what to talk about in pre-con tomorrow, right? Yes.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Go ahead,
No, they're at its
go ahead and
fair.
schedule it right now.
Am I, so I'm correct, we don't